If you've just become diabetic, you're going to have to make some changes. Almost everybody knows about some of the things you're going to have to give up, but not so many know that there are all kinds of wonderful substitutions that will make your diet enjoyable and sustainable. Anybody with any sense knows that if you have become diabetic and you want any hope of reversing your diabetes, you'll have to make some changes in your diet. That lifestyle you've been enjoying and those foods you've been eating have contributed heavily to bringing you to where you are today. And often, newly diagnosed diabetics know almost nothing about the wonderful substitutions that can be made in their diet, which will make a diabetes-crushing diet a whole lot more sustainable. Today we're going to look at 8 simple substitutions that will cheer you up and help you to realize this new lifestyle and this new diet isn't going to be that bad after all. So as we start looking at the substitutions and alternatives that we're going to have to employ to really bring diabetes under control and get those glucose levels down, we might as well start with the big mama of them all, and that is the potato. And notice I have included 2 potatoes here. One is known as a russet potato or a white potato. The other is called a sweet potato. Why should I include them both? And a lot of people will argue all day long, well, a sweet potato is not really a potato. It doesn't matter. It acts like a potato. It looks like a potato. It raises blood sugar like a potato, and it's called a potato. So to me, it's a potato, regardless of what the scientists say. The point is that they will both raise your blood sugar in a hurry, lightning fast. When that potato gets into your stomach, and those chains of sugars are released and turned right back into sugar in your stomach, blood sugar soars. And I've done a couple of experiments with potatoes that demonstrate that in my own body. And if you don't believe it, if you say, Dennis, I think you're a liar, you're a fraud, you're not for real, fine. Get Mike the meter and test yourself about an hour after eating a potato and see what it does to you. If you're diabetic, it will jack up your blood sugar significantly. If you're pre-diabetic, it will jack up your blood sugar significantly. About the only person it wouldn't would be some 22-year-old athlete. Maybe they could get by with it, but most of us cannot. So, and some people say, yeah, but a sweet potato, surely it doesn't quite reach the heights of a regular potato. That's true. It won't quite jack it up so high, but it'll jack it up too high. If someone came to me and said, I'm going to hit you with a 10-pound sledgehammer, or I can take out a 9-pound sledgehammer and hit you, which one do you want? I'd say, well, I guess the 9-pound if it has to be, but better still, don't hit me at all with any sledgehammer. So the white potato is the 10-pound sledgehammer, and the sweet potato is the 9-pound sledgehammer. They're both going to hit your blood sugar hard and fast, but this one maybe not quite so much. So what would be an alternative? And we're not just talking about baked potatoes. We're talking about French fries. We're talking about hash browns. We're talking about mashed potatoes, boiled potatoes, you name it. If it's got potato in the description, it's trouble for you, my friend. It is serious trouble for you. Yeah, some won't be quite as bad as others, but they're all bad. And if you are serious, we're not talking about people just joking around, playing around, dipping their little toe into the keto world. If you're serious about getting your glucose down, you're going to say sayonara to this one and adios to this one and be done with them both. What can we use as an alternative? Well, how about? So here's not one but 2 different alternatives. First of all, the avocado, which is about the same size and shape as a potato. And it is so much gentler and milder and easier on your glucose than a potato. When you compare an avocado to a potato, it is no contest. It's like a potato is 10 times worse. An avocado barely will budge your blood sugar, and a potato will send it to the races. Also, a salad. Now, maybe you don't love salads, but you better learn to love them because they're valuable. You get a lot of nutrition. They do not do much to blood sugar. As long as you don't put a bunch of broken up chips in them and croutons and things that are bread-based, as long as you keep it vegetables and maybe a little meat, a few tomatoes wouldn't hurt, you will be fine. So instead of having that potato for dinner with your meat or your chicken or whatever it is you're eating. Try an avocado, try a salad. All right, let's look at another possible substitution, and here's another bad guy. So here we have another bad guy. It is the all-American hamburger. And hamburgers have been exported all over the world, I suppose, but we Americans probably love them more than anybody. Somebody said, well, I knew hamburger would be a bad guy because all that meat, saturated meat, the saturated fat in the meat, oh, that's terrible. No, the saturated fat's not the problem. The meat's not the problem. The cow's not the problem. The bread is the problem. Newsflash, this will not raise your blood sugar hardly at all. I know people say protein raises blood sugar. For most of us, you can't even tell it. But this will raise your blood sugar like crazy. Like the potato, it is starch. And all starches are made of sugar molecules. They don't taste sweet. That's what tricks and fools so many people. They don't taste sweet. You take a little bite of it, maybe not too sweet. Maybe they put in a little sugar for a little bit of sweetness, but not much. But by the time they get in your belly, all those sugar molecules break down into raw sugar, and you've got sugar in your stomach, and you got sugar in your blood, and your blood sugar goes way high. So, how can we modify the hamburger? What substitute is there for a hamburger in order to make this acceptable to glucose levels? And the answer is you don't really have to substitute anything. You just take the top bun and toss it. You take the bottom bun and toss it, and you keep the patty. So you've got a hamburger patty and nothing else. And that works just fine. There is no law says you have to eat a bun with a hamburger. Now, some of you are probably saying, yeah, but that bun helps fill me up. If I just ate the meat, I don't think I'd get filled. Well, that's fine. Have a piece of cheese with that hamburger. Or have some nuts with that hamburger. Or there's all kinds of choices you could have. But don't make bread the choice. The bread is going to be a problem. So, hamburgers, not so good. Let's move on to another bad guy. And we have a bag of chips here. Actually, in America, we have all kinds of chips, and we have all kinds of flavors of chips, all kinds of textures of chips, and they're all bad. They're all lousy food. They're junk food. They're filled with stuff that will raise your blood sugar. Just not a good choice. And a lot of times when you're traveling and you go into one of these quick stops or gas station little places where you can buy food, you just see row after row of junk food. It's either highly sugared or it's just a bunch of chips. And you think, man, there's nothing to eat. But actually, there is a substitute for these monstrous chips, something you ought to be avoiding at all cost. What would the substitute be? Well, first of all, we've got pork rinds. 15 years ago, had anyone said eating pork rinds is healthy for you, they would have been thought absolutely insane. Well, I don't know how healthy, but I guarantee you one thing, they will not raise blood sugar. The total carbs is less than 1 gram for a serving. These will leave your blood sugar alone. And we're finding out that what we used to think was bad isn't really so bad at all. What is bad is any food. I don't care how healthy, how natural it is. If it's going to jack up your blood sugar, it's not good. Another choice would be nuts, and I've just brought out some of these. You may say, what are you bringing out a Nescafe jar for? Well, I use these empty Nescafe jars to keep nuts in sometimes, and these are Brazil nuts. And then we've got peanuts, as you can see. I've got a bunch of sunflower seeds. These are not nuts, these are seeds. I've got some walnuts. These are pumpkin seeds and almonds. So seeds and nuts are tremendous substitutes. And guess what? Even in those gas station little places that sell some food, or those quick shops as we call them, you can find seeds and nuts. And so you can find something to eat. Get yourself a cup of coffee. Get yourself some nuts of some kind. It'll quell your hunger pains for a while till you can get a real meal. So don't give in to the chips. Find something that will not raise your blood sugar. Let's move on to another bad guy. So here is one of the most evil, dastardly villains of all time.
It is this harmless-looking gold medal all-purpose flour, basically white flour. It is a disaster, and millions upon millions upon millions of people all over the world cook with white flour, and they make all kinds of products out of it, and it helps them to become diabetic. It is, you might say, a diabetic aid. It is a nightmare for blood sugar. If you're serious about getting your glucose under control, you will say hasta la vista. Actually, hasta la never again to white flour or any kind of flour. It's not that bleached flour gets a pass. It's not that whole wheat flour is okay. They're all bad, but this is the worst. Which brings us to a great substitute, which is almond flour is the number one. It is the keto preferred, the keto champion of all flours, because it's not really a flour at all by most people's standards. It is a nut. It is an almond that's been crushed and crushed and crushed and blanched until it becomes a very fine product that you can actually bake with. And you throw in some baking powder, and you can make all kinds of things. Honorable mention goes to coconut flour, which is not quite as low carb as almond flour, but almost. And it is good too. And you put these two together, often it works great. Not every time, so not every recipe can use both, but many can. And most of the muffins I make will have both of these in them. So here's something I saw a while back I've used for pancakes, and it is called keto-friendly flour. But when you look at the ingredients, it is basically almond flour, number one, coconut flour, number two, and probably a few small other ingredients thrown in. So what we're talking about is getting the most bang for your buck, getting the best discount on carbs you can. If a man is going to sell me a Rolls Royce and he says, oh, this has got everything on it, it will drive itself, it'll do this, it'll do that, it'll last you for the next 30 years, I say, that sounds great. How much is it? Well, it's only $2 million. What would I say to that guy? Sorry, the car sounds great, but I can't afford it. If another guy comes up with another car that's nice and it works and it'll get me around and it looks good, but it's not quite up to the level of the Rolls Royce, I say, how much is that? He says, well, that's $7,000. I said, well, that's a whole lot better than a couple of million. So you want to get the best discount you can. And some things are just not worth it. You can't afford them. And the white flour that I showed you, you can't afford it. You, my friend, you, sir, you, lady, diabetic, pre-diabetic, or simply concerned about your health, you cannot afford to eat white flour products. You cannot afford to use white flour in your cooking. Your health can't stand it. But you can use almond flour, coconut flour, and this keto-friendly flour, which is basically almond and coconut anyway. All right, next of the bad guys that we need to substitute for is the famous blueberry muffin. Who in the world would not love a blueberry muffin? It's beautiful. It smells good. It tastes good. It makes you feel all warm inside. It's almost un-American. It's almost unnatural not to love blueberry muffins. But guess what? These things are a terror to your health. One of these muffins has 44 grams of carbohydrates, more than a candy bar. It would be bad enough if they just made them without sugar and threw in a couple of blueberries. That would still be a lot of carbs because of the flour involved. But they add sugar as well. So you got white flour plus sugar. They make these monstrosities, and a lot of people eat them and drink a cup of coffee and have a muffin for breakfast and feel pretty good about themselves. They say, well, hey, this is a lot better than eating a donut. No, it's not. A donut, actually, most donuts would have less carbs than this blueberry muffin. You're not doing yourself a favor by staying away from donuts and eating a blueberry muffin. It may sound natural. In fact, it is totally unnatural. Is there an alternative? The answer is yes. Well, how about low-carb blueberry muffins? Well, you look at these, you say, those don't look like blueberry muffins. You're right, they're not. I looked for the blueberries in the freezer, and I couldn't find any. I said, Benedicta, did you use some blueberries? What's going on? And apparently she did on some project she was fixing for herself, and I didn't know it. So we had no blueberries, and I didn't have time to go out to the store, so I took strawberries and made a strawberry muffin, but the same recipe could make a blueberry muffin. These are made out of You guessed it, almond flour and coconut flour with I think Swerve was the sweetener, and some strawberries and a couple of some baking powder. And when I tasted one, and I've had actually 2 smaller ones, they were so good. They were as good. In fact, I would say they're better than the store-bought blueberry muffins. Just that good. There are some alternatives and some substitutes that are okay, they're pretty good, but they're not as good as the original, not as good as what we're trying to sub for them. But these are actually better. So let's move on to another bad guy, which is a sweet sugar-filled dessert. This one is called Chocolate Chip Explosion Cake, and man, does that look good. And I'm sure if I tasted it, it would taste great. But if I look at the back to see about the carbs, it tells me that it has 60 grams of carbs for half of a slice. Just way too many. You want to be a diabetic, eat this regularly, and there's a good prescription for you to become diabetic. Of course, I'm not saying eat this regularly. I'm saying don't eat it. Don't eat it ever. Oh man, are you telling me, Dennis, that I can never have anything sweet? That my lips have to be so sanctified that nothing sweet can ever pass through my lips again the rest of my life? No, it's not that bad. There are alternatives, and that's what this show is all about. So let's look at an alternative. And this is a chocolate mug cake. I used, again, almond flour, coconut flour, but this time I threw in a heaping tablespoon of cocoa powder. And then I took a piece of sugar-free chocolates, unsweetened chocolate, and scraped it and took those little bits of chocolate and sprinkled it in. And I grew it up in the microwave, took about 90 seconds. And here's what you get. Bam! Look at that baby. Just lovely. And usually, in fact, almost always, I will divide this into 3 sections. Bam! And another cut. And this gives me a dessert for 3 different evenings. I would never eat the whole thing. At least I don't think I would. I don't think I ever have. But just one of these, and I'll usually take some walnuts and sprinkle them over the top. And then often, in fact, almost always, I'll put a little whipped cream on the top because whipped cream, believe it or not, has very few carbs. So if someone came in and saw me eating chocolate cake and nuts and whipped cream on top, they would look at me knowing I do this Beat Diabetes program, and they would point their finger in my face and say, "You big hypocrite, look what you're eating. You're the biggest hypocrite in the whole world." But of course I'm not, because this is low carb, and I know it's safe for my glucose. How do I know? Mike, the blood sugar meter, has told me that. And it's made of almond flour and coconut flour with a little stevia erythritol combination thrown in to sweeten it. Some almonds, a little whipped cream. Not a problem for me. You test it yourself, see how it works for you. We'll leave a link to the video where I make this chocolate mug cake down below. All right, let's look at one more bad guy for this particular Beat Diabetes episode, and that is most fruit. Now, I know you're shocked, and some of you are saying, "Dennis, you have lost your mind. Do you not know how healthy fruits are? Have you not heard about how you must eat your fruits and vegetables? Not just vegetables, but fruits and vegetables. Leave the meat, leave everything else, but by all means eat your fruits and vegetables." Well, here's my advice for you, my friend. You go test yourself. Eat just 2 bananas. If you think bananas are so great, test yourself before you eat. Eat your 2 bananas, wait an hour, test yourself again, see where your blood sugar goes. It will skyrocket. I can almost guarantee you, unless you're just not at all diabetic. Oranges aren't quite as bad, still too much sugar. Bananas, too much sugar. Mangoes, too much sugar. I could go on and on. You say, is there no hope? Is there no hope that I can ever eat fruit again? Well, actually, there is, and that brings us to our alternative, which is the berry family. No, not talking about Dr. Ken Berry. Talking about strawberries and raspberries and blueberries and almost any other berries. Amazingly, they have little sugar compared to what you would think they would. It doesn't give you a free pass to eat as much as you want. You have to be moderate, but to eat a few berries, maybe with strawberries, you could even sweeten them up with a packet of stevia, erythritol, kind of a sweetener, and put it over a mug cake, and you will think, where has this been all my life? So enjoy berries in moderation. Most of the other fruit you want to avoid altogether.
When it comes to crafting a diet that beats diabetes, one of the major features must be that this new diet has to be a diet you can not just live with for the next few months, but a diet that you can sustain for the next several decades, up until the end of your days. Sure, a hamburger patty and a cucumber for every meal would do the job, but who could live with that for 10, 20, or 30 plus years? Very few could, me included. But the good news is we do not have to live on hamburger patties and cucumbers for every meal. There are so many keto meals and low-carb substitutes that you can enjoy a great variety of meals and food alternatives which will keep you satisfied for the rest of your life. Now, what I've shared so far is only a small fraction of the possibilities, and I will be back next Friday, the Lord willing, and share 9 or 10 more substitutions you can make. And additionally, you can find dozens, if not hundreds, more choices for foods by going to the YouTube search box and typing in keto and then add a food, such as keto donuts, keto bread, keto bagels, keto biscuits and gravy, keto scones, and on and on and on. So do not despair, my friend. There is life after you say goodbye forever to that standard diet, and you embrace a diet that slashes the carbs off your plate and out of your life. Your blood sugar levels will drop like a stone, and your A1c will come down significantly. What's more, you'll feel great, and you'll experience the exhilarating thought, I can do this. It really isn't all that hard, and it's not nearly as bad as I thought it would be.